Hello, my name is Mike Telichko, and I'm gonna try to go over something that I call a concept of vertical ventilation and how it is related to present day situation with COVID, how it can be a great tool to fight actually any airborne disease that might be spreading around. And I want to point out that this is one of four concepts that I actually point out as being, really good tools that we can use to fight COVID. And the reasons why I'm doing all of that is because despite all the advances of understanding present pandemic, we still have some issues. And one of those issues is a complete lack of assessing the cause of this situation that we have. And I mean not the source where it came from, but if you think about there's something that helped this virus to become so virulent, so bad, and spread so fast. So if we don't address that, if we don't change anything, it's just a matter of time, despite any vaccines that we do, any medication we develop, it's just a matter of time when we're gonna face another similar pandemic, and we have been facing a similar epidemics before in years but this is just getting worse. So we definitely have to do something. In my opinion, one of the things that help those diseases to thrive at this time is just one of the diseases, one of the things that many of them exist actually. But one of them, in my opinion, is the presence of much more immune suppressed and chronically ill people that would otherwise already died years ago if they would be treated, because there was no treatment for diseases they had. But nowadays they can be prolonged, their life can be prolonged, for example, with novel treatments for viral diseases, novel treatments for cancers. They can actually live longer, but unfortunately they remain in this chronically ill state, and that is also immune suppressed state. So that is one of the things that helps any kind of microbe to thrive. You just have this paradise of people that they can multiply and spread through. So generally, if we cannot change that at this time, we cannot make people more healthy, but we can prolong their lives. So it means we have to make our environment less accessible or more resistant to spread of different diseases. And particularly the concept I'm going to be talking right now is targeted on respiratory diseases such as COVID is. So if you ever notice the ventilation, how it is made in pretty much any place you go, and I'm referring first of all to hospitals, because this is a typical scheme that we have. This is a typical scheme of ventilation that we have in hospital. So this is the outlet grid, the blue one. We have the outlet grid, and we have an inlet grid. So those suck up air, and the blue ones, they release air. So the thing is, that's usually how they are set up. Pretty much, it can be a little different. It can differ a little from room to room, but this is generally the way that air goes. So oftentimes I see those actually being in patient rooms, and meaning that the air that goes into room, it takes all the stuff that's in the room air and brings it to hallway, which usually has the inlet. So some system have reverse setup, but generally two things are happening. So it's moving horizontally from one location to another, grabbing all the stuff with it. And the other thing that you want to pay attention to is the pattern of how it moves. And so it moves like it goes as a loop. And see, if it comes out of there, it moves all the way here. So it comes out on the top, on the ceiling, and it goes back into the ceiling. And that actually creates a turbulence that does not allow particles to settle by the natural way. So many research that has been done, for example, that particles can travel like 6 feet or so, they're good. But oftentimes they don't account for these turbulences that actually happen here, and they keep them up. And I encourage anyone who's watching this video to go next time whenever you're going to be at your workplace and check out those grids, how they look. And you might be surprised by how dirty some of them are. I'm just going to show you few examples, few pictures of that. So these pictures were taken in one of the better hospitals here in Chicago. Don't want to tell which one it was. So this is the restroom, which, as we see, has this inlet grid. So and let me see how it looks from closer. So this is the same grid. Look at all the dust, all the dirt, all those chunks. And so legitimately, we're putting billions of dollars in development of new methods to treat disease, but how are you supposed to fight any airborne disease with this type of ventilation? And again, I enforce everybody who's watching this video, just go and check how it looks in your place, and you can usually pretty much see, like, you can distinguish where's the inlet and where's the outlet, because inlet would be really dirty, like you see here. If you look closely, there's like chunks of dust sitting on these grids, and that is also a eye proof of how things go, meaning if it is grabbing the dust, which is relatively heavy particle compared to aerosol particles, it means that aerosol comes up as well over there. So it keeps the aerosolized particle in the air, and oftentimes on the level of human height, which is ideal to spread them. So this is why I have committed some time to figuring out the ways on how to change it. And some people think that the airflow is not significant there. Well, this is the picture from that same hospital to show you how much air comes out of the small crease there in the door. That's how it comes in from the hallway. So everything that is in the hallway gets forced into this small lonely restroom, and you can see how the paper is being picked up. You can also check that in any facility you work to see, you can find out the direction of air by this small experiment, because of the grids are relatively big, you might not always be able to feel the airflow, how the velocity of the airflow, but you can see it in instances like this. So going back to our plan and what we can do to improve. So this is pretty much a standard solution, this one here. So you have an inlet here and outlets here. So the ideal way is to modify the system to what we see here in the first picture. So this is what I call the vertical airflow ventilation. And let's see what features it has. So you can see that the HVAC system didn't change. So it has the air conditioning system and all of that. The pipes are still going. The only thing we change is the location of pipes, which is a really cheap and easy thing to do, and the location of outlets. And I also want to show you how it looks from the side, so you can appreciate. So you see the pipes, the red pipes, which pick up dirty air, they are coming down. So sorry, the controls here are not the best, but whatever you have. So you see multiple air grids that release smaller, but they're multiple, and they distribute air evenly. So everybody who is standing in between those grids, it receives the same amount of nice fresh air coming into him. So this guy here, he receives a fresh amount of air, and he receives it not from the patient side. It doesn't go through the patient, he gets it directly. So the thing is, it doesn't get contaminated as it goes out of the air vent. And one more thing you want to do for that, you want to kind of flip the entrances. So it's not going to be blowing directly here, but you want to make it so to put some caps on it. So it actually is going to blow onto the ceiling, and that will distribute air much more evenly, like so. That's a good thing, because that airflow velocity creates another thing that is called Venturi effect. So Venturi effect is whenever a high velocity flow forces into a state of kind of a state of immobile state of fluid or gas, and that's what we have in most air systems. So when it forces in, it actually drags the surrounding air with it and mixes with it. So that becomes a major problem if we per se look at what's going on in some places as we proceed to another room, which we have the standard um, we have a standard air purifier. So this box here, this one here, it represents, it's a lame representation, but whatever we have. So it represents the our air purifier. And I've seen those units being available, HEPA filters, but they're distributed just randomly. So imagine this thing blowing air randomly somewhere. For example, if it blows it up, so the air goes and it goes up and then it goes to the provider, which is our nicely dressed guy here. So it goes above and through the patient, and it actually, so this is that you can get a sterile air coming out of here, but it gets contaminated due to Venturi effect and the way it travels through the room. It gets contaminated immediately. So things like this, they actually dilute the amount of infectious particles rather than eliminate them. And again, that might not seem like obviously bad thing, because we often think of these things as something that helps us to fight things like dust. And if you just dilute a dust concentration, that's beneficial anyhow. If you dilute infectious particle concentration, that's beneficial, that's good still, that's better than nothing, but it's not enough to just dilute. If you run down from 100% of dust to 5% of dust, that's great achievement. If you run down from 100% of infectious agents being distributed here around in room to 5% of infectious agents, is a major concern, because you don't need much, you just need a few. You need a lot of dust to cause a disease, so that just reducing amount is good, but you need just a few particles to cause actual infectious disease. And that forces us to understand that we have to do something that is much more than just diluting. So we want to, and this system here, as we see, again, it forces the air down. So the first thing it does, it keeps, the higher you go, the cleaner you get. So whenever somebody is standing in the room, he's pretty much, his head, his most vulnerable place, stays in pretty much clean area here up top. And all the particles, even if he expels anything, it instantly gets dragged and goes down. And we're gonna have to put filters here, 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 and I'm gonna talk about filters a little later. But just the idea that this system instantly not only reduces the amount of particles, it actually drags them out of the site where they can infect you. And it tends to completely eliminate those particles by the way the airflow goes. So this is how simply modifying can do. And I'm gonna go over a few other systems, how we can adjust our situations to improve what's going on. So this is the system where we use columnar or vertical airflow air purifier. So I have a video on my YouTube channel that shows a really primitive but simple model of one of those things, and it shows, but just the principle is, so that this pretty much same thing happens here. We just put a column that sucks the bad air in, down, and it releases the clean air out from top. So it actually flows on top, so it gets distributed with minimal turbulence. So it's a laminar flow that goes down on the sides of that column. So if like column stands nearby in between the patient bed and the provider, let's picture that from up top. Let's picture that like this. So here we see this column being right next to the patient. So the fresh air comes here and all around. So, oops, and so it goes all around. So the patient gets fresh air and the provider gets fresh air, and their airflows do not mix. And then all of their particles, whatever they breathe in, that gets sucked down there. So this is as simple as it is. This is not a rocket science, but still it's something to pay attention to. Um, so now this is a system, how it would look if we would slightly modify that a nice air purifier that we had here. If we just adjust it a little, we add just a few cheap hoses to it. So what we get here is kind of hybrid system, but it's really cheap to make, and that's the benefit of it. So as we see, we have I didn't do like a super great job with drawing all these pictures, but we have a air that would just go out here, and then it gets distributed from these outlets here. So again, there's multiple points. You actually want to point it so it points towards the ceiling, but that's not a point, so you get the most laminar flow going down, like a smooth flow without any turbulences. So what that does, again, it delivers fresh air to everybody who's in the room, generally pretty much independent on where they are located. It does not drag air from one person to another. And then as all that air goes distributed, it gets sucked back into the filtering module, which filters it. So good air comes from up top. Everybody who stays up feels good air. And then all contaminated air is not mixed or distributed anywhere. It goes back and gets filtered, gets sanitized. So that's the main goal. And it would cost probably around $15 to modify any available HEPA filter to work in this pattern. And as you see, you can place it the way so it doesn't interfere, it doesn't change your logistics that you work with patient, it doesn't interfere with what you are doing in the room. And so this is kind of how we can modify or hybridize our system if we don't want to do what was in the first room, which is a good, like the best one, yeah, with all these distributions here. So if you don't want to do that, so you can do a simplified situation, and this is it. This is how it looks. So if you look from up top, we still have a pretty much our old system with this air goes in here and the clean air goes into here. But what we have changed here, we slightly modified it. So we added this hose here that goes down. So it actually sucks air up here. And we added a few outlets to this outlet. So it's not just blowing, so it is being distributed to all these points that we have here, and here it blows. So again, we have a good air distribution. We can achieve laminar flow, and we can force particles to stay down instead of mixing them with all the air around. And I'm going to show you that from a little different perspective. So let's go down just a little more. As we see it here on this image particularly, so we just put a piece of this is just to show you how simple it may get. So this is just putting as much as putting a piece of plastic box with holes on it, attaching it to cover up the grid, and distribute the airflow from the grid towards these pipes, which are again usually cheap plastic or other vent pipes. It's extremely cheap and simple, takes just a few minutes to set up. And again, we keep one hole here, and so all these stuff, it blows fresh air all around the room without any mixing, without turbulence. And all of that air, even when it gets contaminated, by the point it gets contaminated, it still gets sucked down. So it's not returning up anymore. After it has gone through the people, it's not returning anymore. And of course, putting HEPA filters, and that's one of the other things I would wanna tell about, and just to make a short remark. So you can people are afraid to do it because of the cost of HEPA filters. Well, it's not actually as bad, and there's certain things you can do to minimize the costs. So first thing, what you can do, you can put 3 filters. So you would want to do, what you would want to do is to put one HEPA filter, yeah, and then on top of HEPA filter, you put a simple, cheap dust filter, and then you put a foam filter in front of all of that. So the air goes, if we have our HEPA filter, our foam filter, dust filter, and our foam filter here. So what it does, and the air goes over here this way. So what this thing does, it reduces the load of heavy particles on the HEPA filter, because we actually needed to filter extremely fine, small particles, and it can get clogged up really easily with pretty much just simple dust. But our foam filter here is gonna take out most of the dust. So it doesn't go to the HEPA filter. And foam filters are good that they're actually reusable. So you can buy them once and then you can just wash them periodically with just soap and water, let them air dry, and use them again. They're just soaking the gross dust that I've showed you on the other pictures before. Then again, our next layer, which consists of cheap dust filters, which are much cheaper, usually a few times cheaper than HEPA filters. So that filter takes smaller particles, but again, something that we are not interested in disease away. So again, it's gonna grab most of the fine dust, but not the microscopic particles. And it's just gonna extend our lifespan, because lifespan of HEPA filters is pretty much pretty much depends on how much flow they can still deliver. So if you regularly wash your foam filter and you regularly change the dust filter, your HEPA filter would be devoted solely to filtering those infectious microscopical particles, and that will extend its lifetime tremendously, and that would in fact reduce the cost tremendously. So to cap this whole thing out, if you're still watching this, I just wanna emphasize what we've talked about. So the systems that we have right now are delivering air in the way that it goes through some places where it can get infected and mixes with the clean air, and it gets circulated around. Pretty much similar things to our HEPA filters, but just on a smaller scale. And so we want to avoid those things. So we want to create what is evenly distributed laminar flow that goes vertically. That's why the term comes vertical ventilation. It comes from top to bottom, keeps all the particles down, and delivers fresh air to everybody independently without mixing the airflows. Then, of course, it gets taken down by the floor with either HEPA filter or a modified just cheap hose drop from the inlet part of our HVAC system, as it's shown here. Either way is gonna work somehow. And we can also modify already existing systems to work really efficiently, and this can become one of the very powerful tool to prevent, pretty much break the spread of any airborne disease, not only COVID. And this is something we have to think about looking years forward. So I would want to hear your thoughts about it, your speculations, and what you want to say. I want to hear your answer. I'm also gonna try to make this video shorter in future so you can watch it actually fully. But for now, I just hope you respond in any appropriate way you think, and I wish you all the best and stay safe. Bye bye.